generation passed away, we hardly have any right now. And that is one thing that I was thinking when I was reading your bio, that you have translated Little Prince from, into Konkani. But is there any kind of translation between the Indian languages, like from Konkani into any other Indian language? Would you be aware of that?
From Konkani?
From Konkani to other languages, or from other Indian languages into Konkani?
Yeah. But before that, I think if I'm allowed to digress a little, then I would like to throw some light on the special situation of Konkani. Konkani, we are, the speakers of Konkani are about 3 million in number, and we are distributed over 5 scripts, Kannada, Malayalam, Perso-Arabic, Roman script, and Devanagari script. And the readership is all, the readership of Kannada would be Konkani speakers living in Mangalore and areas surrounding Mangalore, not Karwar, not the area, the full area in Karnataka, because Karwar writes Konkani in Devanagari script. Then Malayalam would be some speakers, especially those of the older generation who live in Cochin and Ernakulam. Then Roman script are Konkani speakers living in Goa. Mainly the Christian masses, they write in Roman script. And Perso-Arabic would be Nawayat Muslims who are from Bhatkar, that area. Not all Muslims, because Muslims from Goa, they feel Urdu is their mother tongue, not Konkani. So we have a division amongst ourselves. And Devanagari, although it is the official script, that is the youngest of all literary traditions in Konkani. And literature in Devanagari script was launched around 1910 by Shanai Goibab. So it is about 100 years and a little more, like it's a young literature. And right now it is the official script. But one can say initially, Konkani, another thing which we should pay attention to is the status of Konkani in Konkani speakers. Konkani was never considered a language, not by the outsiders, but the Konkani speakers themselves. Like speakers from Goa, they felt, okay, Konkani was a language, only for speaking, but not for writing. The Christian masses, for them, that was the only option left, because they learnt Roman script in the church, so they could communicate and write letters only in the Roman script and in Konkani, but not in Portuguese. But the elites, they took to Portuguese as their language, and even that became the mother tongue in some of the homes. Now, when the Portuguese left, Portuguese language in the home environment was replaced by English for some houses, some elite homes. And Konkani was obviously the language of the masses. Hindus, the majority felt Konkani was a boli, a dialect, and Marathi was the language. So the language of writing was Marathi, and Konkani was only a dialect. But the movement of Konkani identity took up Konkani, writing in Konkani, and that is now picking up, which is a very positive thing, in my opinion. And some of the things which are, like Konkani became the state language, it was recognized by Sahitya Akademi. Then in 1992, it was recognized as one of the scheduled languages of India, along with Nepali, Manipuri. So ever since then, and we now have, I teach in Department of Konkani in Goa University, which is the only department that offers post-graduation courses. And now we have students who come from different areas of Goa, from all different sections, all religions, Hindus, Christians, Muslims. It's a very good representative department of Goa, I feel, because if you see the Marathi department and the Hindi department, only the Hindu students will take to Marathi and Hindi. But Konkani, you have Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Goans, and even outsiders now who are settled in Goa and who feel like studying Konkani. So which is a very positive thing. And initially, there was also this stigma attached to Konkani, that it's a language which is a language of the Saraswat community, Like initially, at least the 3 generations of Konkani writers came from that community. But after the liberation of Goa and with democratization of education, this situation changed drastically. So now, before talking about translation, I feel it's we do take up translation, but what hurts me is when people from Goa, whenever anything is discussed with them, like if I say, okay, this is a very beautiful novel in Konkani, when Goans say, is it translated into English, I feel very hurt, I feel translation, people like you asking about translation is very good, because it should be translated to have a better visibility. Konkani should have a visibility in India and in the world, because we have very good literature, although it is less in number. Like there was Inquisition in Goa, and there is a novel on Inquisition, by Mahabaleshwar Sail, who comes from Karwar, which is translated also in Marathi, and it has really in Marathi, it has the first edition is already over, and the second edition they have printed. In Goa, it doesn't sell that much, but then it is not translated into English yet. In Hindi, no. But then Konkani is the only language that has a novel on Inquisition. No other language in Goa. I mean, there are writers in Marathi, but people have not written about Inquisition, about our history. But Mahabaleshwar Sail's novel, it's very beautiful. It doesn't take very humanistic perspective, and beautiful novel, a fat one. And but when people from Goa, when they say, oh, when will it be translated into English, then I feel very hurt, because it's, translation is not for Konkani speakers who live in Goa and who are not exposed to the script. So maybe because of that novel, why don't we read the script, learn the script? That's what I feel. Because I can read 3 scripts of Konkani. Devanagari, my primary education was in Konkani medium, obviously. It was, I think I was the first batch of Konkani medium schools. And then I can read Roman script very well. And Kannada, I learned. Malayalam, now people don't write in Malayalam script. They have adopted Devanagari, the recent generation. So one need not learn. But 3 scripts I can read. So I feel if a person knows Hindi, because all students in Goa, they learn Hindi, so reading Konkani in Devanagari script is not that much of a problem for Goans, So this is the situation. And maybe if there is second round, then I would like to talk about what we have done, for promoting readership in Konkani.
Actually, I'm very glad you brought up this whole thing of linguistic nationalism, because coming from the Northeast and having studied the whole ethnic and nationalist conflict there, it's something very close to my heart, something that I've studied very closely, looked at very closely, feel very closely. This whole phenomenon of so-called smaller ethnicities, lesser communities coming up, and there's this whole resurgence, and they're asserting themselves, their languages, which is something amazing that is happening even in the Northeast right now. And there was this initiative by a local publishing house there to translate between the different languages of the different tribes in the Northeast, which is, again, something that even people within the Northeast are not aware of, because we live so closely together, but I, being an Okomi, I cannot speak any of the other tribal languages. When you're saying that you feel hurt, that people from Goa cannot read Konkani, same way the other communities in the Northeast, they feel hurt that their neighbors cannot read their language, cannot understand their language. There's been this thing going on for a long time. And I think that the more we translate between the languages, the more we can come together. But there's one thing that has been bothering me for a long time as somebody who translates poetry. The problem of translating poetry, well, you can look at it as a problem, you can look at it as, I don't know, some kind of, you can give it a philosophical twist, ideological twist, whatever. But I have been thinking about it a lot, and I would like Menka to talk about it, because she has translated a book of partition poetry from Sindhi. And again, that is about this whole thing of lost homeland and belonging and identity and all of that. So Menka, if you could please...
The thing about being willing to read in your own language, or being more to the point, being able to read in your own language, has a lot to do with the fact that you are culturally rooted in your heritage. And that was a problem that the Sindhi community faced. And personally, it was a problem that I wasn't even aware of as I was growing up, because, I was an Indian writer living in Mumbai, growing up in Mumbai, speaking in English, going to a convent school. And I did not even realize that there was this huge lacuna in my life until much later, when there was this friend of mine in Hong Kong whom I met. You never know how and when these things will happen to you personally, how these realizations take place, and they have to come from within. And this friend was born in London of Sindhi parents, and he went to Pakistan for a holiday, and then he came back in a rage. He came back in a fury with photographs. And he said, this was a house that my family used to own. One day I'm going to be rich enough to buy it back for my children. It's their heritage. And that's when I sat up a little bit and I said, there is something here I need to think about. And unfortunately, I did grow up not learning my own language. It was a huge loss. But together with a friend of mine who's also a poet writing in English, who's also Sindhi, we thought that we would translate Sindhi poetry. We did not think of, narrowing it down to partition. But as we went along, we realized that it was, in fact, partition was the big thing that created that whole huge trauma and divided families and created that, fundamentally, the loss of land. The writer, Popati Hiranandani, used to keep telling me, it's not your fault. It's, your generation has not had access to that land, has not had access to the ethos that allows you to understand your language and your literature. Because I belong to the third generation of Sindhis. And she said the thing is, the first generation who actually suffered partition could speak about it to their children. They could, they could tell them about what they had lost and the treasures of the Sindhi language and the literature. And the second generation had now learned to adjust, had moved to different areas around the world, had adapted. And it was, you had to learn English because that was the only way to survive, to cope. And it was a matter of pride that you could learn English and get by. And then the third generation, it was completely, there was no, nothing to fall back on. And I got interested in learning about Sindhi literature, and as we met a poet called Arjun Shad. He used to be my professor in this college that I studied at. And we worked with him on Sindhi poetry from his own personal collections of the poets that he had that were long out of print, people that he used to know in Sindh. Unfortunately, all that is lost now because his house was damaged in the floods that took place in Mumbai. But luckily, we managed to, get some of that. So, we managed to talk to a few of the poets. Many of them are in their 70s, in their 80s. We are losing them. And, I went to Adipur to do a feature on Sindhi literature for Muse India. You'll find it online. And over there, I met a lot of Sindhi writers who were trying to reclaim that heritage and trying to pass the word on to younger people. And I don't think enough people are listening, They're doing fundamental, fantastic work. They are publishing books of Sindhi folk tales that are now being translated into English. They've got CDs, they've got cassettes. And it's all available online if you look, but I don't think enough people know. Luckily, there is this trend. People are now realizing that there is something that needs to be, retrieved from the past. So this message is going out. There is a lot of publishing happening in Sindhi. There's a lot of publishing happening through grants, self-publishing, but there are no readers. I remember this poet called Moti Prakash told me that, there are about 150 books being published every year, but we publish them and we read them and we circulate them among our people, and that's it. It doesn't go beyond that. And that generation is slowly disappearing. I was talking to the critic Bansi Khubchandani. He's a literary critic and a fiction writer. And he was saying that until recently there were 300 books being published a year. There are no real, figures that one can depend on. But he said now it is reduced to 100. And the thing is that whatever writing is also taking place is happening not in the classical traditions of Sindh, but ghazals, free verse, because no one in today's generation can read or speak the way it should have been done earlier. There is also a lot of archiving going on. There is someone called Saz Agarwal who's brought out a book where she's talked to these Sindhi families who've survived partition, their memories. And they're very painful memories, so no one wants to remember them. Even the poets we spoke to, they said, we don't have any poems about the partition. And when there was this poet, Kimat Hari Singhani, who told me this, and when I asked Shahad said, what nonsense. And he pulled out a poem by Kimat Hari Singhani, which was about the partition. So they just don't want to remember that this was, something that they had suffered. And there is a lot of work to be done. To go to your question, Ripana, about the problems of translating poetry. As someone writing poetry in English, I was very aware of that. Anju was also very aware of it. We certainly knew that a great deal would be lost. But we also hoped that something would be gained, something would be retrieved from that. And I'm sure there are, ways that the poems could have been improved. Every time you look at a poem, you know that there are 10 other ways you could have done it better, even with your own writing in English. So certainly that was an issue with, Sindhi translation. The other thing is there are efforts being made to get the younger generation to understand Sindhi, speak Sindhi. There are some Sindhi colleges where the students were actually, they had volunteers, the older students were there, and they were forcing the kids to take Sindhi as the second language. They were saying, you are using the Sindhi quota to get your admission to this college, so you have to learn Sindhi. But what happened was that, it's being done in Devanagari, because that is the only way that the younger generation will understand it. The Arabic script is practically lost in today's times. So there's a lot of literature that is lost because of that. There's been a huge controversy over Devanagari, the switch to Devanagari. And that didn't, but it's the only way. Now there is also some move to use the Roman script. So there is a new dictionary that's just come out. The day that I was at Adipur to interview this gentleman, Satish Rora, he put in the last entry for this dictionary. And it is in Sindhi, in Devanagari, and in Roman script. So there are these efforts, but not enough. And hopefully, one little step can lead to many steps.
Actually, this use of the Devanagari script is also a very contentious issue in the Northeast, because all our tribal languages were written in Roman script for a long time, since the missionaries actually gave them a script. And then, after independence, after we joined the Indian Union, we had to many of the tribal communities had to take up Devanagari. And that is still a very contentious issue, like it is for Sindhi and for Konkani as well, I suppose. So anyway, I would like to know from the two publishers here about government intervention, because Devanagari, of course, that was because of government intervention in many ways. And this whole question of government grants, which Menka also touched upon, I think, a little bit. And this is also something that was reflected in this morning's talk about government acquisition of books and government grants to writers, how good, bad, ugly, it's a very problematic area, right? So if the two of you could throw some light on that, maybe Satyanand?
सरकार ग्रांट दे, किताबों की खरीद लाइब्रेरी में कराए, यह सब अच्छी बात है। हम प्रकाशकों के लिए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, लेकिन हम प्रकाशकों के लिए और हमारे लेखकों के लिए और हमारी किताबों के लिए, तीनों के लिए ज़रूरी है पाठक। जो किताबें सरकार खरीदती है वो कहाँ के लिए खरीदती है? कॉलेज और यूनिवर्सिटी की लाइब्रेरी के लिए। मध्य प्रदेश में अभी सरकारी खरीद हुई है, किसके लिए खरीद हुई है? सरकारी स्कूल में पढ़ाने वाले शिक्षकों के लिए। गाँव में, छोटे छोटे कस्बों में कम्युनिटी लाइब्रेरी है या नहीं है, इस पर सरकार ध्यान दे रही है या नहीं, इस पर हमें बात करनी चाहिए, क्योंकि कॉमन रीडर वहाँ है। वहीं वो आदमी है वहीं वो लोग रहते हैं जो अपने बच्चों को साहित्य पढ़ने से रोकते हैं। वहीं पर है जहां आपके पाठक की भ्रूण हत्या हो रही है। तो सबसे पहले उनको साहित्य का कद्र करना सिखाना होगा, उनके माइंडसेट को बदलने की जरूरत है। सरकार इसके लिए क्या कर रही है? क्या हम सरकार से इस बारे में सभी पब्लिशर, सभी भाषाओं के पब्लिशर एक टेबल पर बैठकर बात कर सकते हैं? इसके लिए क्या हम लोग माहौल बना सकते हैं? हमें इसके बारे में सोचने की जरूरत है। सरकार हर रूट के शताब्दी और राजधानी ट्रेन में शास्त्रीय संगीत सुनवाती है। क्या वो कविता नहीं सुनवा सकती? क्या वो कहानी नहीं सुनवा सकती? हिंदी में एफएम रेडियो पर एक कहानी शुरू हुई, याद शहर, नीलेश मिश्रा की। नीलेश मिश्रा एक सक्सेस स्टोरी हैं, मेरे लिए एक मॉडल हैं। उनको मैं यहाँ पर उनके बारे में थोड़ा बताना चाहूँगा। अंग्रेजी का पत्रकार, अंग्रेजी का लेखक, हिंदी सिनेमा में गीत लिखने गया, एक अपना बैंड बनाया। अचानक वो एक दिन एक एफएम चैनल पे, एफएम बैंड पे याद शहर प्रोग्राम लेकर आया। विविध भारती पर बहुत पहले गीतों भरी कहानी, गीतमाला, ये सब कार्यक्रम आते रहते थे। ऐसा नहीं था कि कुछ नया था। नया था तो बस यह कि सारी कहानियाँ जिनमें 6-7 गाने होते थे, 1 घंटे का अगर प्रोग्राम है तो 6-7 गाने 30-35 मिनट वही निकल गए। 25-30 मिनट की कहानी हुई। सब नौजवान पीढ़ी को फोकस थे। हिंदी पट्टी में सबसे ज़्यादा, अगर सबसे बड़ी बीमारी आज के समय में कोई है तो नॉस्टैल्जिया है। वहाँ की युवा पीढ़ी सबसे ज़्यादा विस्थापित है, अपने गांव, अपने घर, अपने शहर से बाहर। उस बीमारी को नीलेश मिश्रा ने पकड़ा, उसको उन्होंने सहलाया, पुचकारा और सबको याद शहर में लेके गए, एक काल्पनिक शहर में। हर बार वही कहानी होती थी कि घर छूटा है, कुछ यादें पीछे छूटी हुई हैं, शहर छूटा हुआ है, कुछ यादें वहाँ रह गई हैं। लेकिन हर बार ये होता था कि लोग ऑफिस से घर पहुँच रहे हैं, रास्ते में वो सुन रहे हैं, कार पार्किंग में लगी हुई है, कार पार्क भी हो गई, कहानी खत्म नहीं हुई, तो कहानी अंत क्या हुआ ये सुनने के लिए अपने घर नहीं जा रहे हैं। कार में, रेडियो में वो सुन रहे हैं। एक एफएम बैंड पर वो एक सीजन खत्म हुआ, दूसरे पर शुरू हुआ, लगातार वो चल रहा है। उनके पास कहानियां कम पढ़ने लगी। उन्होंने दिल्ली प्रेस क्लब में बैठे बहुत सारे ब्लॉगर्स को और क्रिएटिव वे में, थोड़ा भी जो नैरेटिव नॉन फिक्शन लिख रहा है, क्रिएटिव नॉन फिक्शन लिख रहा है, वो कहानी जानता है या नहीं जानता है कि कहानी कैसे लिखी जाती है। उन कुछ लोगों को चुना, बुलाया, बिठाया, लड़के लड़कियों को, उनको कहा कि आप हमें कहानी लिख के दीजिए 500 से 700 शब्दों में। उनको एक अच्छा खासा अमाउंट बताया कि हर कहानी का कितना ये मिलेगा। उसमें से वो कहानियाँ चुनते हैं। अपनी कहानियाँ तो लिखते ही हैं, उनकी भी कहानियाँ लेते हैं, वो बताते हैं कि किसकी कहानी इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। अब वो कहानी सुनने के लिए लोग अगर अपने ऑफिस से जल्दी निकल रहे हैं कि अब कहानी शुरू होने का टाइम है, जल्दी से कार में बैठो, कार पार्क कर रहे हैं। और वो कल हम जिस लपरेक की बात कर रहे थे, ये लपरेक का आइडिया डेवलप कहाँ से हुआ? शुरू वहीं से हुआ। 25-30 मिनट की कहानी में लोगों को जो दिलचस्पी है, उस दिलचस्पी से ही कहानी को लेकर के एक ये हुआ। और वाकई वो एक चीज है जिसके लिए अब प्रिंट में लिटरेचर तैयार करने की जरूरत है, जो वॉइस में है। तो इस तरह से अगर गवर्नमेंट सच में रीडरशिप को, किताबों को, साहित्य को, साहित्यकारों को बढ़ावा देना चाहती है, तो वो ट्रैफिक पर, रेल में, बस में, मेट्रो में कहानियां सुनवाए ना, कविताएं सुनवाए ना। हमारे बहुत सारे साहित्यकार हैं जो बहुत अच्छी तरह से कविता परफॉर्म करते हैं, पढ़ते हैं। थिएटर के इतने सारे, हमारे देश में थिएटर के इतने सारे नौजवान लोग हैं, उनका इस्तेमाल करें ना, 2 माध्यम को एक में जोड़े ना, छोटी छोटी फिल्में बनाए ना, दिखाए ना। अपने आप लोगों के मन में लिटरेचर के लिए रेस्पेक्ट पैदा होगा, लिटरेचर की समझ बनेगी, और जब समझ बनेगी तो वो अपने बच्चों को भी उससे जोड़ेंगे। और फिर मुझे लगता है कि शायद सरकार को आगे ग्रांट देने की जरूरत भी खत्म हो जाए।
two questions for you. One is how dependent on or independent of government intervention are you? And secondly, taking off from where he left off, how far would you go beyond the written word to popularize literature? I mean, of course, like you said, there's always, it's a two-way street between the print and beyond. So as a publisher yourself, independent publisher, how far would you go beyond the written word to popularize literature in your language, in the other languages?
Yeah, for the first question, as of now, I think there's no fund for translations between languages. No.
Translation.
About translations between languages. I think NBT is having a plan to start something, Not yet. It's being discussed. Okay, yeah. So that is one of the, for example, if I'm translating a book from Tamil, into Malayalam or from not that known, language. Of course, we have, in Malayalam, we have from, like Hindi, Marathi, Bengali and all, we have, and of course we share some kind of, cultural aspects. But, when it comes, for example, from Assamese or, so we need, for publishers, independent publishers, if we could get some kind of support for translation or for subsidizing the book, so that, we can make it available. It will become more attractive for buyers, so that is one thing the government can do. And regarding promoting reading, what was the second question?
Promoting literature, and for that, if you have to go beyond the printed word, the written word, like you said, programs on FM radio maybe, or maybe readings.
Yeah, that happens a lot in Kerala, we have small book fairs, then, we have book launches, that's all happening, in Kerala, it's very much there. There are fairs where, people from different fields, like movie, from film stars, directors. So they are all participating in these kind of book fairs, and so that kind of activity is very much there in Kerala.
Okay. There's another thing that bothers me a lot, that fiction, yes, there has been this whole resurgence of translating between the different languages, but what about the other genres that we have in all the different languages, like, say, non-fiction, travel writing, biography, autobiographical writings? There's very little of that being done. So is there anything happening in your state along those lines, other genres, other than fiction, other than maybe poetry, to some extent poetry, but not much?
हिंदी में तो काफी काम हो रहा है.
हिंदी में हो रहा है.
नॉन फिक्शन भी काफी कुछ, नैरेटिव नॉन फिक्शन काफी कुछ दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं से ट्रांसलेट होकर के आ रहे हैं.
Okay.
और काफी पढ़ा भी जा रहा है.
And that is
मराठी का पूरा दलित राइटिंग एक तरह से तो हिंदी में इतना ज्यादा पॉपुलर है कि उसमें से कुछ लेखक अब ठीक वैसे ही हो गए हमारे लिए, जैसे कि अमृता प्रीतम और शरदचंद्र, और इन लोगों को जैसे नहीं समझते हम कि हिंदी के बाहर के हैं. वैसे ही लक्ष्मण गायकवाड़ और ये शरण कुमार लिम्बाले, ये सब लोगों को अब उस तरह से लोग पाठक अपना समझते हैं.
And is that happening because of government intervention, or even publishers like you are doing?
नहीं, publishers का अपना ही इसमें काफ़ी बड़ा रोल है. हिंदी publishers इस मामले में बहुत ही उदारता से सोचते हैं. तो अगर दूसरी किसी भाषा में कोई भी लेखक, उसकी कोई किताब बहुत उभर रही है, उसका बहुत चर्चा है, तो तुरंत अप्रोच करते हैं, उसको ट्रांसलेट करने की पहल करते हैं. हाँ, कभी कभी हमें लगता है कि हिंदी के भी हमारी किताबों के बारे में दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं के प्रकाशक उतनी ही उदारता से सोचें, क्योंकि हमारे लेखक भी चाहते हैं, पूछते हैं कि क्या और भाषा में हमारी किताब आ सकती है.
I know definitely that a lot of translation is being done into English. And again, I refer to the lecture that we had in the morning. Nobody, likes this whole cultural connotation that is attached to English translation and the acceptance or prevalence of English translation. But that is happening. Even like I was just talking about biographical writing, some of that also has been happening, I know for sure. Zuban, for instance, is doing a lot of it. Penguin, I wish Shiva Priya was here today, because she is handling the whole Penguin series. And we could have had some discussions, very fruitful discussions with her. If there's anybody here who's doing it, we would love to hear from you after we've had our say. And having said that, there's another thing that I think we need to look at. As somebody who writes in English myself, I write in English, yes, but I also look at myself as a translator when I'm writing in English, because I'm translating my cultural ethos into that language. So when Menka is writing in English, I'm sure that's the same thing that you do, or anybody else who's writing in English. And so I really, we don't have much time, I guess. But if, Menka, you could talk a little bit about that, as you being a cultural translator for your own community.
See, as far as writing my own poetry is concerned, it is not something I will consciously do, to say, okay, now I'm going to write a poem about my Sindhi heritage. It doesn't work that way. You're going to write the poem because it grabs you by the throat, and how it turns out is always a surprise to you on the page. But yes, lately I have found myself somehow, partition is coming in somewhere. There was this old swing that, one of those old chulas that was like a bed, and that was in my house. It came from our Sindh home, I know, and was packed up and kept away because there's no room in a Bombay house for that sort of thing. So I found myself writing a poem about that. But it is not, it's not something I would do as a matter of course, as the only thing I would do in English. But yes, when you speak of English as the master language for translation, that is the case. This book that we translated into English, the Sindhi partition poetry, there was a Marathi poet in the audience at the launch, Niranjan Uskare, and we didn't know him, but later he came up and he said, I always thought I was a very culturally aware and sensitive person as a poet. I thought I knew what people have been through, and I was very surprised to know that Sindhis have been through so much, because you associate Sindhis with diamonds, with jewelry, with a lot of, it's a very wrong stereotype, I would like to say that. And he then told me he was going to translate this book into Marathi, which he did. And shortly after that, he passed away. So there is a Marathi translation that Sahitya Academy also published. After that, a Gujarati academic said, I would like to translate this into Gujarati. So now there is a Gujarati translation of this book, also published by Sahitya Academy. And it all started because English is the common language. There's no getting away from that.
Madhavi, if you could tell us a little bit about Konkani writers who write in English. I mean, we know quite a few, but
No, I would like to speak about Konkani writing itself,
Okay, sure.
Why in English? Yeah, actually the theme is about popularizing readership in Indian languages. So actually during the Konkani language movement, identity movement, we had a very good activity which was called Laditak. The Konkani writers took it up, and they took a group of writers who used to go to villages, different villages all over Goa, because Konkani did not have that reception by the people. It was not received well. People felt it was only a language to be spoken and not a language in which literature could be produced. And so writers like Pundalik Naik and all who are now established writers, they used to go and narrate their short stories, read out poems, and in any place which was like even in a marketplace, a small group of people, and then maybe in a school, then maybe in a temple, so anywhere. And then this was very well received, and then because of this, we had more writers joining the Konkani mainstream. And I think after government patronage, this has somehow stopped, And what government does it gives grants for publishing Konkani books. And then again, books which are not given grants are bought by the government. So one day, once I went and Department of Information and Publicity also buys books, So once I went and asked the director, because I am also associated with a publishing house in Konkani. And I asked him, what do you do with the books? So he says, no, they are just lying in the godown, we don't know what to do. So whoever wants, they can come and ask, we give them a set. So this I feel is very disrespectful, you know, what the government is actually doing. So as he said, we are not given, the writers are not exposed to readers. So the books are bought, people get money, and maybe one can also play like if you publish about only 500 copies, then 300 copies are bought by the government, 200 you can easily get a market. So first edition is out. So this is the actual thing. And so another thing which I would like to add is once when Ravindra Kelekar got the Gyanpith Award, I personally approached all the prestigious bookstores in Goa. And so that they could, these are all the prestigious bookstores keep only English books. So I said, okay, can you have a small place for this? Because he's got the Gyanpith Award. So some refused point blank. They said, if only there is any translation, then we would keep. But Konkani books we don't keep. And if this is the state of Konkani books in Goa, because right now for a long time, there was only one outlet by an NGO in Goa, I mean Konkani Bhasha Mandal in Margaon, and that was only during the office hours. You know, so if one wanted to buy a book after the office hours, it was not available. And this was like a typical case, like a Khadi Bhandar, you know. So people who were there in that on that counter, if a person wanted a particular book, only that book was given. Another book was never shown. You know, so this is how books were sold. And now Goa Konkani Academy has also opened its own counter, but it's the same case, a small, crammed, small place where all Konkani books are available, you know. And then if you want 3 copies of one book, then they say you come tomorrow. So this is the state. So if this is the state of affairs, then I feel government is not doing, at least a bookstores, bookstall of Konkani books in all scripts maybe. At least for Goa, it could be Roman script and Devanagari script, but it's not there at all in Goa. You know, so this is the state of affairs. So once what I did is when Ravindra Kelekar passed away, the first death anniversary, we were all planning to have it on a grand scale with a seminar. So I refused, you know, I said, I am not going to participate in that. We will have some event which will expose his books to more, young readership, you know. So what we did is 3 of us got together and we approached the college principals where there is Department of Konkani, and we took his books with 40% discount. Students were first informed that we would be coming with the books, and one of the, there was one lecture on his writing, and there was a lecture, and then after that followed by an exhibition of his books. And this was a very good experience. Every student bought at least one book. So I feel this has done something to the, you know, it has maybe contributed, it will get more readers and maybe future writers also. Because higher secondary and college students were approached, but because of my time constraints, we could go only to some 7 colleges. After that, we could not do it, you know. So this is one thing to promote Konkani literature. And translation, about translation, there are like OUP, National Book Trust, and even Oxford has translated Konkani fiction.
That's
you know?
exactly what
yeah,
I was talking about.
Konkani fiction. And Ravindra Kelekar selected essays, because he is an essay writer, are translated by Vishwa Konkani Kendra, you know, not by these publishers.
एक बहुत खास बात मैं शेयर करना चाहता हूँ, वो ये कि कल नमिता जी से चौरंगी की बात कर रही थी कि पेंगुइन ने पब्लिश किया और विक्रम सेठ ने उसके बारे में कहा कि मुझे बहुत पसंद है। हिंदी में बहुत पहले 70s में मेरा ख्याल है, हिंदी के एक बहुत रिनाउंड पोएट कहानीकार राजकमल चौधरी ने उसका अनुवाद किया, राजकमल से छपा, और हिंदी में चौरंगी बहुत ही पॉपुलर नावल है और शंकर एक सबके जाने पहचाने नाम हैं। ऐसे बहुत सारी किताबें हैं भारतीय भाषाओं की जो अंग्रेजी में बहुत बाद में ट्रांसलेट हुई हैं, विदेशी भाषाओं में बहुत बाद में आई हैं, पहले हिंदी में आ चुके हैं। उनको ज्ञानपीठ अवार्ड मिलने या साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड मिलने से लेखक को मिले, उसके पहले वो हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट होकर के वो लोग आ चुके हैं और बहुत ज़्यादा बिकते हैं। यहाँ तक कि जो विदेशी भाषाओं के अनुवाद हिंदी में आते हैं तो वो नोबेल प्राइज़ मिल जाए, बुकर मिल जाए या विवाद में आ जाए किताब, तो वो अनुदित किताब जो है वो कुछ बिक्री उसकी बढ़ जाए, वो अलग बात है। अन्यथा हमारी जो भारतीय भाषाओं से हिंदी में अनुदित किताबें हैं, उनकी बिक्री उनसे कम 40% ज़्यादा औसतन होती है, क्योंकि वो ज़मीन एक है, जीवन का रंग एक है, खुशबू एक है, भारतीयता सब, तो वो हिंदी के लोगों को बहुत पसंद आती हैं। केवल भारतीय साहित्य जो है वो उनकी असली पसंद है। इसमें हिंदी में ऐसा कुछ मतलब जैसे देवदास फिल्म आई अभी शाहरुख खान की, जो कुछ साल पहले, अचानक से देवदास की बिक्री बढ़ गई, जबकि कई बार फिल्में बन चुकी हैं। देवदास जाने कितने पब्लिशर छाप चुके हैं, नए एडिशन आए, कुछ नए प्रकाशकों ने भी छापा और वो भी मार्केट में खप गई। अभी सरस्वती चंद्र धारावाहिक आ रहा है हिंदी में, गुजराती का उपन्यास है। मुझसे ही जाने कितने लोग पूछे होंगे कि ये उपन्यास कहाँ मिलेगा। गोरा उपन्यास, उस पर सीरियल आ रहा है दूरदर्शन पे हिंदी में, साहित्य अकादमी ने छापा था, अब कॉपीराइट फ्री है तो और लोगों पे नहीं छापा है। धारावाहिक आने के बाद अचानक से उपन्यास की मांग बहुत बढ़ गई। तो ये जो एक रीडर्स पूल तैयार करने की बात है और भारतीय साहित्य को अनुवाद के जरिए एक हिस्से से दूसरे हिस्से के पाठकों से जोड़ा जा सकता है, और दूसरे ये कि उनको हम दूसरे माध्यमों से जोड़ करके, सिनेमा, धारावाहिक, रेडियो, इनसे जोड़ करके हम उनके लिए व्यापक पाठक समाज तैयार कर सकते हैं, बहुत बड़ा पाठक तैयार हो सकता है।
Yeah, this whole use of popular media to again popularize literature, highbrow literature, quote unquote, that I think is very important, and we shouldn't really have this very watertight mark between the two. And what you talked about, Bengali literature being translated into Hindi. I don't know who it was. We were talking about this last night, and we were discussing that Bengali literature has been translated widely into the other Indian languages, and it is more popular than most other. Right. So this kind of give and take between two particular languages or literatures and communities has been happening on a very large scale, yes, but also very exclusively. So how do we as translators, writers, publishers, that is, I think, the biggest question facing us. How do we replicate that in the case of all the other languages and have a sort of a commonality, a parity between the different languages? Because I think that is the need of the hour, and we do, I mean, this whole thing of cultural chauvinism would come up here, and alienation and all that. These are words that we use, ad infinitum in the Northeast. But I'm just talking about, I'm not talking about the Northeast in particular. I'm talking about in general, all the Indian languages. How do we sort of bring about this kind of a parity between the different languages? And Thomas, maybe a last word from you, and then we'll open it up for discussion for everybody, and maybe there'll be some suggestions from the audience.
I feel like earlier there used to be more exchange between languages, but emergence of English is a hindrance. I mean, it's being limiting, exchanges like between languages. That is my feel like. Really, it's diminishing, exchanges between, languages. Yeah, that's my feel.
Okay, what do the audience have to say about that?
I have a question from Satyanand, but I'll have to ask in English. I hope you can answer. See, Hindi, they say that you have about 400 million Hindi speakers. And since Hindi claims to be a national language, one would expect that you will have translation from all Indian languages into Hindi. And you just said that Hindi publishers are very alert in picking up good authors from other Indian languages. And you also express a hope that the other language publishers would be as alert as Hindi publishers. I just want to know what's the percentage of translations that come into Hindi from other Indian languages on an average. And then how much do you translate from languages that do not have a Devanagari script. Like how many authors have you translated from Malayalam, or from Telugu, or from Kannada, or from Tamil? If you can give some examples of translations.
इसका ठीक ठीक आंकड़ा तो अभी तुरंत देना मेरे लिए पॉसिबल नहीं है, लेकिन लगभग सभी प्रमुख भारतीय भाषाओं से हिंदी में अनुवाद हुआ ही है। UR अनंतमूर्ति बहुत पहले से हमारे यहाँ ट्रांसलेटेड हैं। गिरीश कर्नाड अपने शुरुआती दिनों से हमारे यहाँ हिंदी में ट्रांसलेटेड हैं और बहुत ज़्यादा पॉपुलर हैं। उनकी सारी किताबें लगभग हमारे यहाँ हैं। प्रतिभा राय की सारी किताबें हिंदी में हैं उड़िया से। बांग्ला के जितने प्रमुख लेखक अभी माने जाते हैं और बहुत सारे नौजवान पीढ़ी के भी लेखक हमारे यहाँ ट्रांसलेटेड हैं। उनकी कहानियाँ, उनकी कविताएँ हमारी पत्रिकाओं में छपती हैं। और हिंदी में आज से नहीं, ये बहुत पहले से, मतलब आप ये समझिए कि ये लेन देन का जो ये है वो स्वाधीनता की लड़ाई के समय जो एक भारतीयता का मामला बन रहा था, तो उस समय से ये चल रहा था। और हमारे यहाँ एक, जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि मतलब दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं में भी हिंदी से पहले बहुत अनुवाद हुआ है, ऐसा नहीं है कि अभी ही हो रहा है। और कहीं ना कहीं अनुवाद का एक जरिया था तभी, चाहे वो 14वीं शताब्दी का भक्ति पोइट्री का सारा ये हो, वो एक तरह की चीज़ें मिलती हैं पूरे भारत की सारी भाषाओं में, चाहे वो आज़ादी की लड़ाई का, फ्रीडम मूवमेंट का मामला हो, उस समय भी जो भी महत्वपूर्ण उपन्यास 14 भारतीय भाषाओं में लगभग इस तरह के उपन्यास आए हैं जिनको हम एक लेवल पे रख के देख सकते हैं। उन 14 उपन्यासों को हम जब देखते हैं तो उसमें एक तरह का सेम ये मिलता है, तो कहीं ना कहीं वो एक पुल तो बना हुआ था। नवजागरण का हम पूरा पैटर्न देखें तो उसमें कहीं ना कहीं एक इंटर डायलॉग बना हुआ है। मैं एक लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल करता हूँ इंडिया हैबिटेट सेंटर के लिए, समन्वय IHC भारतीय भाषा महोत्सव। उसका मकसद यही है कि जो इंटर डायलॉग है हमारी भाषाओं और हमारी बोलियों का, उसको फोकस करके पूरी तरह से भारतीय भाषाओं के साहित्य को डेडिकेटेड है वो लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल। उसका 3रा एडिशन इस साल है, 24 से 27 अक्टूबर। तो ये जो इंटर डायलॉग है, मैं उससे अलग नहीं हट रहा हूँ या मैं उसको डिक्लाइन नहीं कह रहा हूँ। मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि जो हमारे नए लेखक हैं, जो हमारे एस्टैब्लिश्ड राइटर होते हैं, उनका अनुवाद तो हुआ ही है दूसरी भारतीय भाषाओं में, लेकिन जो हमारे नए लेखक हैं अपेक्षाकृत तुलनात्मक अगर हम देखें तो थोड़ा कम है। थोड़ा हम चाहते हैं कि वो और बढ़े, उसके लिए हमें थोड़ा अलग से एफर्ट डालना पड़ता है, थोड़ा कम करना पड़े। अरुण जी कुछ कहना चाहते हैं?
मलयालम और दक्षिण की भाषाओं का प्रश्न है, मैं समझता हूँ कि हिंदी में हर वर्ष 10 से 15 किताबें हम ही लोग छापते हैं। अभी पिछले वर्ष ही तक्षी की किताब थी, अभी सेतु माधवन जी की आने जा रही हैं, और वैकूम बशीर की किताब छप चुकी है। जी शंकर कुरूप को हम लोग छाप चुके हैं। स्वयंवर उनका
नंदन का सारा छप चुका है।
नंदन का मतलब इस तरह से यदि आंकड़ों की दृष्टि से पूछा जाए तो 15 से 20% किताबें भारतीय भाषाओं से, बल्कि इससे भी ज़्यादा मैं समझता हूँ कि परसेंटेज हमारे पास है। और हर वर्ष नई किताबें हर भाषा से हम लोग, अभी जैसे आपके आसाम में जो अरुणाचल में हैं YD थोंगची, जिनको साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड मिला है, और वो हैं तो अरुणाचल से लेकिन असमिया भाषा से मिला है, तो उनका सोनाम जो उन पर फिल्म भी बनी है, उस किताब को हम लोगों ने छापा, बल्कि उसका कार्यक्रम भी हमने अरुणाचल में ही जाके किया। और जबकि हिंदी के लिए वहाँ पर काफ़ी इतना स्पेस तो नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी पाठक हैं। अभी उनका दूसरा उपन्यास भी आने वाला है, सर कटा मानू, शायद वो भी एक उनका बड़ा प्रसिद्ध उपन्यास है। तो इस तरह से सेतु माधवन जी की जो किताबें बहुत प्रसिद्ध हैं वो सभी छपने जा रही हैं। तो इस तरह से यदि आंकड़ा देखा जाए तो हिंदी में बहुत बड़ी मात्रा में भारतीय साहित्य आता है, लेकिन अफसोस है कि हिंदी का साहित्य भारतीय भाषाओं के साहित्य में बहुत कम मात्रा में आता है। इसके बारे में यदि कुछ और यहाँ विचार विमर्श हो।
कर्नल जी एक बात और मैं कहना चाहता हूँ, जैसे दलित राइटिंग है, भारत की जितनी भाषाओं में दलित राइटिंग हो रहा है, जहाँ थोड़ा कम उभार भी है, हिंदी में एक पत्रिका है कथा देश, वो बरसों से एक कॉलम चला रही है। हर अंक में एक भाषा के एक मेजर दलित राइटर को वो लोग उनका एक कहानी या उनके आत्मकथा का अंश या उनकी कविताएं वो अनुवाद करके छापते हैं, और उनका एक लंबा इंटरव्यू छापते हैं, उनका परिचय छापते हैं, तो इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं। तो तो इस तरह से उस पत्रिका के जरिए, मतलब किताबें तो सारी भाषाओं के दलित लेखकों की छप ही गई हैं हिंदी में। कोई ऐसा होगा नहीं कि मेजर दलित राइटर हिंदी में नहीं छपा हो किसी भी भारतीय भाषा का। लेकिन उस पत्रिका के जरिए उन किताबों के छपने से पहले हम लोग एज ए स्टूडेंट, एज ए लिटरेचर लवर, हम लोग बहुत पहले से परिचित हैं कि हाँ इस भाषा में ये हैं, उस भाषा में वो दलित राइटर हैं। इसी तरह से विमेन राइटिंग का भी जो मामला है उसमें भी सेम स्टोरी है।
एक बात और कहना चाहता हूँ, जैसे हमने तो वर्षों पहले कन्नड़ साहित्य का इतिहास, तेलुगु साहित्य का इतिहास, मलयालम साहित्य का इतिहास और अभी सारे भारतीय भाषाओं के साहित्यों का इतिहास हम प्रकाशित कर रहे हैं अपने हिंदी में। उर्दू का हम कई बार प्रकाशित कर चुके हैं अलग अलग तरीके से। तो इस तरह से सभी भारतीय भाषाओं की पूरी जानकारी हिंदी में पाठकों को है।
सत्यानंद जी और अरुण जी से मैं पूछूंगा, तो हिंदी के जो पाठक हैं, साहित्य के जो पाठक हैं जी, इनके सोशल इकोनॉमिक प्रोफाइल के बारे में आप क्या कहेंगे? क्या सभी किस्म के लोग इसे पढ़ते हैं या
ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट सवाल है। असल में जो हमारा दोपहर बाद एक सेशन है चेंजिंग ऑफ इंडियन रीडरशिप, उसमें मैं इस पर अपनी बात रखूंगा, क्योंकि उसको समझे बिना रीडरशिप की बात हम कर ही नहीं सकते। लेकिन आप जो पूछना चाह रहे हैं उसके बारे में मतलब डिटेल बातचीत उस समय होगी। मैं इतना जरूर कह दूं कि पहले पाठक के 2-3-4 चेहरे थे कि मतलब कि वो नॉन फिक्शन पसंद करता है या वो फिक्शन पसंद करता है या वो पॉपुलर पसंद करता है, या फिर भी उसमें आवाजाही थी कि मतलब कि पॉपुलर राइटिंग पढ़ने वाला लिटरेरी राइटिंग भी पढ़ लिया करता था कभी कभार, और लिटरेरी राइटिंग पढ़ने वाला भी पॉपुलर राइटिंग पढ़ लिया करता था। लेकिन अभी रीडरशिप के इतने चेहरे हो गए हैं, चॉइस इतना अपना सबका अपना एक बना लिया है दायरा कि नहीं हमको दलित राइटिंग को ही हमारा मतलब बेसिक चॉइस है, हम यही पढ़ेंगे, हम विमेन राइटिंग ही पढ़ेंगे, हम चिल्ड्रन राइटिंग में भी अब एज ग्रुप के हिसाब से इतना सब कुछ बढ़ चुका है। तो हिंदी तो इतना बड़ा एक हिंदी पट्टी इतना बड़ा मतलब भूभाग है, उसकी इतनी बड़ी जियोग्राफी है, और उसमें पिछले 20 सालों में इतनी तेजी से सोशियो इको साइको चेंजेस हुए हैं कि उसके बारे में बहुत डिटेल में अलग से बातचीत की जा सकती है जी।
I think we have very little time left for discussion, so if you could move beyond Hindi to any of the other panelists.
One question. Yeah. I want to know what's happening in Urdu. Are translations being available in Urdu? Because the first stories of Manto I read was in Kannada, which was really interesting. I want to know, वो खत्म हो रहा है Urdu writing? Are there writers? Are there translations? And especially partition writing.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। शमसूर रहमान फारूकी साहब का उर्दू में उपन्यास आया कई चांद थे सरे आसमां, 2 साल के अंदर वो हिंदी में आ गया, और उसके 4 साल के बाद वो अंग्रेजी में ट्रांसलेट होकर के आया है। धूम मची हुई है हिंदी वालों के बीच कई चांद थे सरे आसमां की। उर्दू राइटिंग को तो इतना ज़्यादा पॉपुलैरिटी है हिंदी में, वो तो कभी लगता ही नहीं है, मतलब हम हिंदी के प्रकाशक भी नहीं मानते जैसे कि वो कोई मतलब अलग जुबान का लिटरेचर हो। फैज साहब की सारी रचनाओं का वो अपने जीते जी सारा कॉपीराइट दे के गए हिंदी प्रकाशकों को। मंटो साहब के सारे बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ पर, अरुण जी कुछ कहना भी चाहते हैं। उर्दू लिटरेचर कभी भी अलग नहीं है, और उसकी रीडरशिप उर्दू में कितनी है मैं नहीं पता, लेकिन हिंदी में तो बहुत है।
हिंदी में हमने 800 से ज़्यादा किताबें उर्दू से हिंदी में छापी हैं।
देवनागरी स्क्रिप्ट में उर्दू लिटरेचर हमारे यहाँ बहुत ज़्यादा बिकता है।
सज्जाद जहीर का तरक्की पसंद तहरीक की यादें, जो कि एक क्रिटिक है, मतलब प्रगतिशील लेखन का इतिहास जिसे कहते हैं, वो भी हिंदी में ही छपा है।
I don't follow anything.
Are they available in English, these translations? I wanted to know. Urdu into English?
इसके बारे में अरुण जी।
Okay, yeah.
पब्लिशिंग हाउस में एक ही किताब बता।
All of you were very good, very interesting, Konkani and you and all 4 of you. And this again is for Hindi. This question is for Hindi, okay? And lots of things are getting translated into Hindi. We agree. But the patti aapne jo padhaya tha, and that list whole thing, It's the mainstream list. The Sahitya Academy award-winning list or something else. And you have been, Satyanand, you have been saying that Sahitya Academy's motto is unity in diversity. Okay? When it quoted that, it was needed during the nationalist movement. Now it has to be diversity in unity. I think it's high time that Hindi publishers and all of us, especially Hindi publishers, because they are the dominating factor, it's important for them to understand that there should be a diversity, not the unity. You need not go in search of unity, go in search of diversity. I think it's extremely important. Otherwise, it's just the mainstream, whatever the mainstream is considered as literary history, literature, that's coming to Hindi. Thank you.
Only the 8 scheduled languages are translated, I guess.
Mr. Nirupamji, I would like to suggest you, being an organizer of such events, can we exchange our catalogs in English so that all the Indian publishers can have their catalogs with each other, having the directories of the language publishers, giving them the upcoming or new forthcoming books, so that the publishers can see that the books can be translated in other languages. And so with the authors also have to see that if their book has to be published in other languages, they have to see their publishers that he has to promote his book or the author itself.
ये बहुत अच्छा सुझाव है और समन्वय की तरफ से मैं ये प्रॉमिस कर सकता हूँ कि हम लोग इस तरह का प्लेटफॉर्म क्रिएट करेंगे और आप सब लोग हमारे मतलब मदद करें और हम वहाँ पर ये कोशिश करते हैं कि वहाँ सारी भारतीय भाषाओं के जो भी पब्लिशर अपना कैटलॉग रखना चाहते हैं, अपना ब्रोशर रखना चाहते हैं, वो रखें और एक दूसरे से शेयर करें, मिलें। ये बहुत अच्छा होगा। इसके लिए मैं अपनी तरफ से जो भी कर सकता हूँ वो करूँगा।
Since there was a request for translation, I just want to tell everybody who is not very conversant in Hindi that he organizes this literary festival of the Indian languages every year at the IHC, India Habitat Center in Delhi. And you invite everybody there, right? All the publishers in the different languages.
Actually, it's always interesting, Samantha, but people don't seem to know. So, you want to talk a little more about it?
Maybe we can take this outside.
Hi, I wanted to actually touch upon this bit about cultivating readership in Indian languages. We are all publishing, and we are all maybe individual pockets publishing in different languages. Pratham Books, of course, when we publish, first go we publish either 11 languages or minimum of 5 languages. We don't do single language publishing. But on the readership aspect, as a publisher, I wanted to talk about a very innovative campaign that we launched on readership last year, which is called the One Day, One Story Initiative, where we take one story and across India, the same story is read by volunteers across all the states. And this was the second year on 8th September, International Literacy Day, where through a volunteer network, we conducted 1,000 reading sessions. Across all states of the country, 21 official Indian languages. We did Mizo, we did Khasi, we did Nepali, we did Konkani. Unfortunately, till the last day, we were tweeting for Sindhi, but we didn't get any Sindhi storytellers. I wish I'd met you. Next year, of course, we will now have Sindhi as well. But I'm saying that as publishers, why can't we come up with innovative ideas? That is going to cultivate the readership. Just publishing is not enough. You talked about railways, right? We did a pilot with IRSTC, and there are a bunch of kids who do travel in summer. We distributed books so that they could read while they are traveling on their summer holidays, you know. So these are the innovative ideas that I think as publishers we need to do to create access to books and therefore increase readership as well. That's
Speaking of innovations, I would like to suggest yet another. Recently, I came across some audio CDs brought out by Radio Mirchi in Calcutta of dramatic reading of Satyajit Ray's stories, which was so good and so brilliant. So I was wondering if this is done in every language, it might help considerably, audio books and audio CDs in the respective languages.
ये बहुत अच्छा सुझाव है.
Actually, with Sindhi, oral literature is quite strong. It just need get like oral.
Yeah, I refuse to speak in Hindi, excuse me. The word is refuse. I come from a language called Tulu. We have oral stories. We do not have written language. What has happened with our language is what has happened with our language is we never had like Konkani. But Mr. Gulzar has, Mr. Gulwadi from Konkani has done has done an experiment. He had these storytelling sessions. He didn't just restrict it to storytelling. He put about 7 or 8 of us, and we were really young kids, and he would ask us to do the illustrations. We didn't have to do anything much. Whatever we could, we did it. But then when he did a few of these sessions, at the end of it, and these were Konkani stories written in Kannada, at the end of it, he published the books, and those books became very popular because it was something that we identified it. See, what is really missing is that grandmother generation. If I read Parthiban Kanasu, it was because my grandmother told me the story. Now we have missed that. And as she said, I did the book reading for Pratham Books, and believe me, I had kids asking me, where can I buy this? And of course, I can send them to the web. It's available on the web. So there is a market, but what is missing is the original storytelling. You know, if you have the child hooked on the story, like we grew up on Amar Chitrakatha, and that's one, Madhvi, that's one area which Konkani is sadly lacking. You don't have illustrated, they all come in Marathi. And when we did when we wanted...
They don't venture into Konkani because of limited readership.
No, even when I was trying to have a performance, I wanted to have Bharatanatyam performance with Konkani songs, everybody looked like I was, are you gone mad? They couldn't find me songs of Krishna in Konkani. Finally, I did one with Balki Baba's. But this is the situation. We have the early storytellers who are missing. So kids, they're not used. It's a logical progression, right? You have a story, you get on to stories, you get on to pulp fiction, and then you get into the literary aspect. And when you're not translating, you're only translating the gods of literature.
नहीं, मैं आपकी बात से बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ और मैंने शुरू में ही कहा था कि वो हिंदी में एक जो सबसे बड़ी कमी है वो यही है कि सीधे एडल्ट लोगों का लिटरेचर तैयार होता है, वो लिटरेरी हो या पॉपुलर हो, मतलब वो वयस्क लोगों का सारा साहित्य है। बच्चों का, किशोर उम्र का, जो केवल साक्षर हैं उन लोगों के लिए किताबें हिंदी में उस तरह से तैयार नहीं होती। अगर होती भी हैं तो बहुत क्रिएटिव वे में नहीं तैयार होती। उनके साइकोलॉजी, उनके एज, इसको ध्यान में रख के तैयार नहीं होती। जिस दिन हिंदी में इस पर काम गंभीरता से हो जाएगा, उस दिन हिंदी में रीडरशिप क्या होगी इसका ठीक अंदाज़ा भी अभी लोग नहीं लगा रहे हैं। एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट बात टुल्लू की आपने बात की तो मैं शेयर करना चाहता हूँ एज ए ऑर्गेनाइज़र। मैं लालच में आ गया हूँ, माफ़ कीजिएगा। समन्वय पहला लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल है भारत का, जो इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस फेस्टिवल, ये जो पूरी तरह से भारतीय भाषाओं के साहित्य को डेडिकेटेड है। उसके बाद बहुत सारे ऐसे लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल शुरू हुए जिनमें अपने भाषा क्षेत्र में वो अपनी भाषा के साहित्य को फोकस कर रहे हैं। तो हमने चूँकि हमने ये पहल की कि भारतीय भाषाओं के साहित्य को ही लेकर हमें चलना है, उसमें हम भारतीय अंग्रेजी लेखन को भी एक भाषा के रूप में मानकर चलते हैं। तो हमने दूसरे जो लोग भारतीय भाषाओं को प्रमुखता दे रहे हैं अपने लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल में, उनकी तरफ भी दोस्ती का हाथ बढ़ाया है। और अभी बेंगलुरु लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल में हमने ये किया है कि एक सेशन हम वहाँ कर रहे हैं समन्वय की तरफ से। कर्नाटका में आप लोग जानते हैं 5 बोलियां भी हैं जिनका ओरल लिटरेचर है, स्क्रिप्ट शायद नहीं है, स्क्रिप्ट है ही नहीं। और उसमें से 2 अभी जीएन देवी का जो लैंग्वेज सर्वे रिपोर्ट आया उसमें टुलू और ब्यारी ये शायद डेंजर जोन में बताई गई हैं। हाँ, तो उन 5 बोलियों के ओरल लिटरेचर पर हम वहाँ एक सेशन कर रहे हैं और सेम सेशन हम दिल्ली में अपने इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस फेस्टिवल समन्वय में रिपीट कर रहे हैं। तो हमारे फेस्टिवल का फोकस एक यह भी है कि हम जो ओरल लिटरेचर है, जो हमारी बोलियों का, डायलेक्ट्स का जो एक बहुत ही रिच अपना लिटरेचर रहा है, उसको कैसे हम रिवाइव कर सकते हैं और नई पीढ़ी को कैसे उससे हम जोड़ सकते हैं।
डॉक्यूमेंटेशन है, ओरल हिस्ट्री का डॉक्यूमेंटेशन है। उन्होंने हाल ही में स्टार्ट किया है कि छोटे छोटे वर्कशॉप्स ले रहे हैं, एक तो प्राइमरी लेवल में और एक एट द पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट लेवल। तो उसमें क्या होता है कि दाना तो जो फेंकना है तो वो फेंकी जाती है, फिर वहाँ से आप लिटरेचर पे वापस आ जाते हैं।
आप लोगों से एक मैं अपनी तरफ से रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूं कि आप लोग अपनी अपनी भाषाओं के, बोलियों के जो भी इस तरह की दुर्लभ जानकारियां हैं वो मुझे मेरे ईमेल आईडी पर शेयर कर सकते हैं। अगर आप करेंगे मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगेगा, आप सबकी मेहरबानी होगी। इससे हम इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस फेस्टिवल को और बड़ा कर पाएंगे।
Okay, I'm a huge stickler for time, so well, we'll end here. But before we end, Menka wants to have the last say, and then we can carry this conversation forward after this, I guess, outside.
Not the last say necessarily, but thank you, Dipana. I just want to, while we're talking about initiatives on translation, I just want to tell you about a fantastic project that very few people know about. In the morning, we heard C.S. Lakshmi's name being mentioned, Ambai, the Tamil writer. She has been working on this project. She runs something called Sparrow, Sound and Picture Research Archives of Women. And it is a very underfunded body, I must tell you. And she has been putting together this series of 5 volumes, 21 different languages, writers, women writers, poetry, interviews, stories. And 3 have come out. I know I've seen them close up because they were laid out in my office where, you know, I had artists working. The 4th is mine, the one that I have edited. I edited it 7 years ago, 6 years ago. It is still not out because, you know, it's difficult to bring out these things. And there is one more that is coming. But these are books that I think everyone interested in translation, everyone interested in Indian languages should get hold of. I don't know how easily they are available. I launched one of them at a poetry festival last year in Mumbai, but you know, they were sold at that time, so I hope they're still available there. But initiatives like this are really important, and they don't get enough attention. So I think, you know, publishers, people who have the money, people who have grants and can give them, should put in their muscle where they can, instead of just, you know, talking about the importance of doing it. This is a concrete thing that is happening, but it's not receiving the attention it should.